All right, Rivertown. What a delicious breakfast. I'm glad that we got to enjoy that with you this morning. Thank you to all of you who brought food this morning. I appreciate your getting up early and doing things for us. Let's turn that music down. There we go. There we go. Well, hey, so breakfast church is one of our favorite traditions, right? And rhythms, call it rhythms, traditions, whatever you'd like to call it. But last Sunday of the month, we know that we can gather around the table, and a few of the reasons why we love to do that is one, we recognize that there is a layer of importance of being able to connect with each other. There's nothing like breaking bread together that allows you to kind of sit a little bit with your folks around you, to kind of move past the real quick surface questions and get to know each other. And as well as when I share kind of my devotional sermon, I give you an opportunity to discuss a few things as well. One of the things I recognize is that in churches, there's a tendency that a few of the people do all the ministry up front, and then everyone else just watches, okay? So one of the ideas about doing breakfast together is at the table, because you have more time in front of each other, face-to-face time, you can actually have an opportunity to minister to each other. Whether you get to minister to somebody else or somebody else ministers to you, but it's not just Bricknell doing the ministry, it's Rivertown doing the ministry with each other. And so that's another one of our reasons why we do this, and I think it's really important to help mobilize you and for you to have an opportunity to speak truth into people's lives and speak from experience and speak from the Word and encourage each other in specific things. So whether you are in elementary school or whether you are retired, it doesn't really, God uses every single person. The other thing too is because there's a group of people of all ages, young get to listen to the older about their faith journey, and they get to kind of pick up on some of the things that you've learned. And I think that fulfills what God asks us to do about discipling the next generation. And it's not just a parent's responsibility, it's the church's responsibility, it's the community's responsibility that we would share what we learn with the next generation. So there's a lot of benefits to doing breakfast together on Sunday mornings. So, the main announcement I want to make sure that we look at is this, and that is during this summer, since we began, we have always emphasized trying to do some neighborhood barbecues, right? It's a way of loving your neighborhood. Nick and Mary, for example, have been a great champion of this initiative, and that is they recognize that the church is bigger than the four walls that we're in right now. And the church actually works better when we're active out in the community. And no better place to do that than your own neighborhood. So, did you pick the home that you live in because you like the floor layout? Or because you liked a piece of property? Or because it was affordable? Maybe. But also, more importantly, is that God is the one who actually gave you that house, gave you that apartment, gave you that piece of property. For what purpose? So you can just enjoy it all yourself, or so that you can love your neighbor? So maybe God gave you that house so that you could love your neighbor and be missionaries in your neighborhood. And so what we've done from the very beginning is recognize that you are a missionary in your neighborhood. And if you've lived there 20 years or 40 years or however long, sometimes it's really easy to just, you settled in, but as soon as you do a little get-together, you're going to bring people together. Catherine, Siebold, and Martin, they just moved into their house almost 2 years ago. And they've worked pretty hard at trying to connect with their neighbors. And they've had a couple neighborhood get-togethers. And just recently, right? When was that? Friday. She was able to finally have this some coffee with the ladies in the houses next to her. And I mean, it took a long time to finally pull it all together. But what happened when they finally got coffee together? You want to share just briefly? I'd love for you to share. It's not a question. Not a question anymore.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I had felt impressed upon me by God that I needed to get to know my neighborhood. And so since we had a gathering with everybody or those who chose to come back in September, I wanted to get all the women together. And I thought, how do I do this? Do I invite them and say, pick a day, or are you interested? Finally, I just said, this is the day, this is the time. I invited, and they all came. All 5 came. And it's kind of remarkable because one of them is half-time in Tacoma, goes back and forth. I picked a weekend she could come. And it was great. And we talked all kinds of stuff, and then we talked about books. Everybody reads books. They want to meet for a book club, all 5 of them. So we're meeting July 8th again, my house. And I picked the book. Whoever hosts gets to pick the book. And I don't know if any of you have read Theo of Golden. It has a lovely Christian emphasis all the way through, and the gospel at the end. Some of them knew of it, but we're going to read it and talk about it.
Amen.
And it's not an all-Christian group by any means, so see what God does.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Thrilled. Now, have any of these ladies ever gotten together before?
No.
They've never gotten together before.
No. They didn't all know each other.
Have they ever met each other?
Yes, by, a wave.
By a wave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's so great.
I was pretty excited.
All right. So what it's going to do, it's basically just that initial conversation fast forwards these relationships. And now she's created a place for relationships to happen. And, okay, Mrs. Bricknell.
I think it's important to note that my mom is not the extrovert of the family. And this requires a lot of effort and emotional capacity and time. And I am really proud of my mom because I know that doesn't come naturally to her. And I think of probably many of us in this room that feels really scary and uncomfortable. And it may be. And the payout and the benefit is worth it. So, good job, Mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there any introverts in the room? Introverts? Okay. All right. Yep. It's good. Oh, yeah. The Hudson Street neighborhood barbecue is massive because of Nick and Mary. Their first one, they had like 25 people come to their. Yeah. Okay. It's like Hudson Street's kind of long if you. Yeah. That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, this morning, I shifted what we're going to talk about. I've been preaching through a series, and I did a little TO on that because we had a really rough week in our community. And so I felt like it was appropriate to kind of have a church family conversation about our week as a community. So, it's just a few miles down the road where that implosion took place. How many of you guys have ever driven by Industrial Way, by the main gate, and know exactly where that takes place? Some of us, I would assume, a room this large, there's some of us who knew people who worked there at Nippon or work in a mill. Maybe you work in a kind of a mill yourself. Like many of us, either we knew the 11 people who died and so those who were injured, or we knew somebody who knew them. But this is kind of this is our community, and this is our community that has made national news in a very tragic way. So, most of us have been probably going through a lot of emotional, just roller coaster. We have questions. How many of you have questions about what happened? How many of you have experienced just sadness or anger or confusion or what do I do? You know, there's all these things that we have been kind of going through. Our own grief, and especially if you know somebody who's directly impacted. How many of you know someone and you have a good relationship with someone who's directly impacted? Yeah. And then you wonder, like, well, how do I, what's my role right now, and how do I help them? And if you work directly in a mill or you have a mill family, there's something that we were talking about at our table, and that's just survivor's guilt. So we have friends and family members who went through the experience, but they are still alive. And so there's survivor's guilt. So our community, what took place back on Tuesday, is going to be a really, really long journey. So the way it kind of works is when there's a catastrophe like this, there's the immediate, like, we need to help. Then there's, right, the recovery phase, okay? And then there's the inspection phase and the investigation phases that goes on. And then there's just a long, long, long process of group therapy, group counseling, individual counseling, family counseling. There's a number of things. There's survivor counseling. There's a number of things that goes on, plus all of the litigation and everything else that goes on and on and on. This is going to be a long process for our community. So one of the things that I think is important is that when things like this take place, I want us to understand, kids, listen to this. When catastrophes and tragic things happen, the Bible actually never tells us to pretend that our feelings don't exist and that we should be okay with everything that happens in our life because we're a Christian, because I go to church. Since I go to church and bad things happen, well, God allowed it, so that I should just be okay with that. Well, that's not the case. Like, we're never going to just be okay when terrible things happen in our life. So, there are a lot of people asking really good questions, really hard questions, really important theological questions, really important logistical questions. There are people who are crying, who are lamenting, who are just overwhelmed, and people are wondering, like, where was God in this? And the good news is that God is not afraid of any of our grief and or any of our questions, okay? So he can handle any of the really tough questions that you and or your neighbor, your friends have about why did this happen and why didn't he. You fill in the gap. So I don't want to rush past this today. I think we need to just talk about it. So here's my first conversation starter for us this morning is this one right here. Okay? So if you're a kid and you would like to ask this question or try to answer this question, you can. And if you're adults, you can try to answer this question at your table. So go ahead and turn together, and let's participate in a little bit of a conversation this morning, okay? All right, let's. I'd love to hear a little bit about some of your answers. Okay. All right, thoughts. What are some of your thoughts, emotions? Some of maybe the questions. What did you guys hear at your table? All right. Thanks, Melody, for leading us, starting it.
Well, we said deep sorrow. I mean, that's your initial. But anger, because of all of the mean comments, the reactions of people on social media, it is sad, and it's just sad to see how people's hearts. Yeah, yeah. Or I mean, there's
Comments directed towards the company, is that what you're saying?
not just
Oh.
the company, just
Yeah.
general, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, insensitive towards the family.
Yeah, and sensitivities.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else want to share? All right.
We kind of noticed the other side of it. We talked about how just awful and sad we felt. But then watching our community come together, like that's where what we all noticed is our community that was literally fighting a couple days previously, or, you know, divided over some other tragedies in our town right now, came together, kind of put all that aside
Yeah,
to help families.
that's true. Yeah, you know, Bob's Sporting Goods. There's, I know Steve went. Anybody else go to that? You guys went to it? There's about 5,000 people that showed up to that. Oh. Oh, here, I'm going to give you the mic. I can't. Go ahead and share that again.
Tomorrow, Red Leaf is going to be donating money that the proceeds they get on Monday, tomorrow, for coffee if you go by Red Leaf.
So if I go by Red Leaf tomorrow, their proceeds are going to go to help families. That's good. Okay. Kiddos, what about you guys? Anything that you guys heard or wonder about? Anything? Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Well, as we, I think one of the things that's important as we ask these types of questions of people is don't try to fix people's or, you know, like correct people's answers at this point. That's one of the worst things you can do is just correct what they're going through, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, like, just listen, right? Just listen for a minute and reflect where they're at, and then just hang in there. Then if there's an opportunity to speak some truth, then you speak some truth, but just practice the listening and not fixing their, you know, how they're processing life. So it's good. So what I thought I'd do today is share a couple of helpful truths as we process grief, right? This ultimately, this catastrophe, accident, it's we're in the stages of grief, okay? So kind of what I'd like to do is just share some things that I felt would be helpful. Number one is there is no correct timeline when dealing with grief. Okay, so most of us are going to experience grief in our life. We're going to. When we do, understand that there is not a prescribed timeline that you or your friend or your family is going to go through. One of the biggest mistakes for me is to assume that you should be over it by now. Do not project that onto somebody, okay? You should be over it by now. It's not your grief, it's their grief and how that person is just going through stuff. When grief was written, it did not create a calendar to follow. So you just have to kind of throw that idea out the window. And grief can come up at any point when you smell something, when you hear something like a song, when you see something that reminds you of that person. Whether it's a birthday that comes up, or an anniversary or something like that, of that nature, what it does, and you're familiar with this, it rushes back all these memories, and then grief kind of comes to the forefront of your life again. So remember, just don't project you need to get over this okay? Because there's no timeline for it. And I think it's really important that we think about this, is that you give yourself permission to heal at God's pace, not at someone else's pace. Okay, so let's just say this. A family goes through something. You seem to be moving along a little further in your healing, and your other family is taking a little bit longer. Like, give yourself permission to heal at your rate. And don't try to speed up somebody else's healing process. Okay? Just understand that there's different processes. So that's helpful. Also in this relationship too, is don't compare your grief to someone else's. Okay, so like your grief is going to be different than your grief. Okay? And when you start comparing, well, I went through something harder than you did, that's not helpful at all. The other thing I think is that we need to just expect that difficult days are going to come, and they're going to go. They come and go. Kind of like those sneaker waves. They just kind of, well, that's a bigger one than I didn't expect that one to come in. It was a little bit bigger. So they just kind of come and go. But at the same time, as you go through this process, just let's trust the Lord with the process that He is taking you personally through. And remember, do not compare your process to the next person's process. This is what God's taking you through. Okay? So give each other permission to go through their process that they're going through. The next thing I want to share is this. Tears are not a sign of your weakness. Okay? They're not. Tears are evidence of your love. God gave every single person tears. Can you imagine not being able to release emotion? And those tears are something that God gave you, and they carry stories, they carry memories, they carry relief, they carry this. They're beautiful, right? And God gave them to you to release, and they're like stories of love that are flowing down your cheeks. So understand that tears aren't a thing of weakness. Now, I think about the survivors who were there in the immediate, who were watching their friends go through this time. I have classmates who worked there, who were there involved in helping, trying to figure things out. And those guys are pretty burly dudes. And I think it's perfectly acceptable for men who watch something unfold like this to cry. And so we give each other, and it's can be awkward to watch a grown man cry, especially if they don't cry at home, you know? So that's okay. You know, I think about when Jesus wept. His closest friends, Lazarus, Mary, Martha, like when Lazarus died, he was really close to Lazarus. And he wept, he cried, he felt, and he experienced the broken relationship, the humanity of that brokenness, and he experienced it. So crying is perfectly acceptable. Jesus was expressing his love to a dear beloved friend, and those tears often are evidence that something mattered really deeply to you. So when I think about, like, how do you apply this to our lives, like, as a believer in Christ, I don't have to, like, be brave for God. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have to, like, have my complete in control. So God never asks us to pretend you're stronger than you really are. So when you're going through it, he's not wanting you to be somebody that you're not. If you're an emotional person, if he gave you tears, he gave you emotions, like, let's just go with that. He invites your weariness. He invites your burdens. He invites you, these broken people, to come to him and to kind of just say, Lord, this is what I'm struggling with. He can handle what you're struggling with. There is no one in this world who can, like, all at one time take everybody's grief. Now, I know when you're in your own home, you're just like, I can't handle my own grief, let alone yours. But there is one who can handle everyone's at the exact same time. Like, the Lord doesn't get tired, and he doesn't run out of empathy, and he doesn't run out of love for every single person on this world forever. Our God's lap is big enough for anybody and everybody to come to him and sit on his lap because they need a hug. They need someone to understand what's going through. And you don't have to be the brave one. And I love this idea that you can be honest with God. Joel, when you go through stuff, I know you just lost your grandpa. Yeah. And just losing a loved one, like, the Lord can handle your raw emotion. Have you ever read the book of Psalms? Right? There's quite a bit of raw emotion in there. He can handle it. He can handle your feelings. The next thing I want to share is this. Grief is love with nowhere to go. Think about this. Grief is love with nowhere to go. You are created to be in a relationship with your family, your spouses, your neighbors. And grief hurts so much because love remains. These relationships matter to you, and there's so many memories that matter to you, and that person is no longer there. And so here is love, and there's nowhere for it to go, and so you experience the grief. So grief is actually a reminder of your love and appreciation for this other person. You still want to call them. You still think about them. You still wish you would have had more conversations or finished conversations with people. You want to sit next to them and drink your coffee with them. You want to have hugs with them, right? I think of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, is that chapter 3, verse 11 says, he has also set eternity in humanity's hearts, meaning that we were created to be eternal, to live forever. And so when our people that we care about aren't there, there is love where there's nowhere for it. It can't be returned. It's not reciprocal. And so it's really, really difficult. And you guys have experienced that. God created us to be in these long relationships with each other. And death happens to be the doorway to eternity. And so, for those of us who have lost somebody, I'm sorry. I know it means a lot to you guys. And we know people who have lost somebody this week. And so, as a reminder that God created us for those long relationships, and death is the doorway unto eternity, and one day we all walk into that place with Him. The good news is that death doesn't have, or it doesn't get the final word. Remember that. This death doesn't get the final word. Because Jesus has overcome death. And He has taken the sting out of death. So thinking about this idea of that grief is love with nowhere to go, I want to give you permission to not apologize for your grief, okay? You don't have to keep apologizing for what you're going through. This is what you're going through, and the Lord's taking you through it, and it's different, but don't have to apologize for it. And that your grief is something beautiful because your grief reveals how much you love people. That's what it's revealing. It's just like you know this, but then the idea that someone's not going to be there anymore or someone has already moved on is that this is revealing this deep affection that God has given you in these memories, and He's revealing how much you love these people. And Jesus can, Jesus is the one who can give us hope during that time. Okay, fourth thing is this. Healing usually happens in community. Now, it is perfectly normal while we are in these moments, our community is in these moments, that the strongest temptation for grief is isolation. How many of you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, so speaking from my own experience, I like to kind of go, when I'm dealing with stuff, I like to go into my little cave, okay? And do not drag me out yet, okay? Don't drag me out into what you think you want from me. But it's okay, maybe if you say, it's okay if you ask for permission to come in and just hang out. Because sometimes that's the best thing you can do for somebody who's isolated, is to not be dragged out into the social world because you don't really feel very chipper and I don't want to talk to everybody, but I still want community. I still need community. And so sometimes maybe it's asking for permission to come in to that space where you're at and just sit along your friends and sit along your family and sit there with them and just kind of be with them. But it's easy to want to pull away, stop talking. It's easy to want to just stay isolated. But remember that God has designed you and me for relationships. Galatians chapter 6 reminds us that we are to carry each other's burdens. And so that's just going to look different for you and for your community. So how do you carry each other's burdens when they're giving you no ideas, right? So maybe it's real simple things like looking for ways to help, right? So this week, look, how do we help the people? And there's a number of ways our community is helping. What ways have you heard our community helping? Let's list them off. Share with me. Fundraisers. Okay. So you're not putting on the fundraiser, but you can participate in the Red Leaf fundraiser. Or Bob's, they did a fundraiser. Some of the credit unions, you can donate to those families. There's several GoFundMes. Are there anything else going on in our community? Meal trains. Yeah. Meal trains are a big deal. Okay. Prayer. Prayer is definitely one of them. Anything else that we know of that the community is doing? is their business doing free counseling? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so businesses are bringing food to the responders for the response teams. That's great. It's good. Oh. Donating sick leave. Yeah, this, like there's one of the wives, she works at the school, so people are donating their sick leave so that she can have some time off. Their PTO. So the next thing I want to do is, like, how do you help someone who's grieving? Okay? How do you help someone who's grieving? Like, what do I say? What do I do? How can I love my neighbor? And so there's some real easy things that I think are going to be practical, the 5 Ps I call them, and you'll find this here. The first one is presence. I think this is really simple for you and I to do. And that's just to kind of show up. I want you to remember this. Please don't ever underestimate the ministry of presence. So when somebody finds himself isolating, okay, and you're all wondering, like, how do I help that family out? How do I help that person out? How do I help my best friend out? What can I do for them? Don't ever underestimate just coming and being with them. You don't even have to say a whole lot. Just kind of being there matters. Being with them matters. So don't underestimate that. Ministry of the presence. Oftentimes, our college chaplains, that's what they do. Like, they don't always have these poetic things to say to people when catastrophes hit in their life. They're just there. And it's a look. It comes with a look. It comes with a hug. It comes with, like, I care for you. I'm really sorry this happened to you. And that's it. But you're there, and you're just... So you can do that. Romans 12:15 says to mourn with those who mourn. Just sit alongside people and just empathize with them, what they're going through. Mourn with people who mourn. The next thing you could do is pray. Okay? You can pray for them. You can pray with them. Those are things that we can do. When you don't know what to say, sometimes you're just at a loss for words, and you can just say, hey, I'd love to pray for you. And if you're like me, and if they're willing to, just say, may I pray for you right now? And again, you don't have to have these poetic prayers, and if it's your first time ever praying out loud, give it a shot, right? Give it a shot. So when you pray for somebody, it reminds them that they don't have to carry this burden all by themselves. That there's somebody coming alongside them, and you are fulfilling the Galatians 6 passage where you're coming alongside and you are carrying that load, that burden, that emotional pain that they're going through. I think the next thing that would be really simple is, besides your presence and your prayer, is being patient with people. Okay? Again, don't rush their healing. Okay, don't try to scoot them along in the process of getting better or moving on, because healing does take time. So be patient with people. Don't assume grief is going to be over anytime soon. It's not. It just is not. So be patient with each other. And then again, the one that maybe we're talking about is practical help. So we've done the meal. People are doing meal trains. If they have a family, and if you know them, again, these are people that, whether we know how to help those who experienced last week catastrophe or in the future, other things, is that if they have kids, maybe you help their kids out somehow. If they have a yard, maybe you can just kind of lighten the load and do some yard work for them. There's household responsibilities that everyone has. Running errands, getting groceries. And sometimes when you're dealing with grief, when you're trying to like manage your home and your life, it just seems impossible. So just say, hey, can I help out this week? I'd love to run and pick up your groceries for you. That's a massive burden that you just took off that person's plate. And I want to remind you to ask specific questions, okay? Rather than, let me know if there's anything I could do for you. So earlier this week, I reached out to Caitlin. Caitlin was a girl in my youth group whose partner, Braden, was killed in this accident. And so I was messaging her, and I found myself doing what I just thought about, and that is, if there's anything I could do for you, let me know. How do you think that's going to land with her? I don't really know what. What? Thanks for offering. So I'm like, okay, more specific, Paul. What is more specific things that you can do? And so I gave her some specific things that I said, hey, can I help you with talking to your family through this process? Can I help you with your memorial service that you're going to be taking? And that's what I thought I could do. So be more specific about ways that you would like to help. And say, would it be helpful to do some yard work for you? Would it be helpful? I'd like to pick up groceries for you, or I'd like to bring a dinner for you on Tuesday. Does that day work for you? Be specific on how you would like, so it can make it easier for them to say yes or no. Okay? Just a couple basic things there. And then persistence. And you guys alluded to this, and that's the important thing about keep checking in with people. Okay? So, I want you, if you haven't already, to write down this date, May 26th. Okay? Write down the dates of when things happen in people's lives. So when you find out when somebody you know goes through something, write it down in your calendar and put an annual reminder in your calendar that pops up, so that you can continue to check in on them. Because when the year comes around, or birthdays come around, and anniversaries come around, it's hard. So keep those reminders and be persistent in just following up and learning how to help them and check in on them. Remember those key dates, because like we were talking about at our table, is that our community is rallying right now. In 3 months, and in 6 months, that support, you don't experience it as much. So I just want you, when you know of key dates happening with people that matter to you, put them in your calendar. Make sure it's on an alert that it pops up so you can check in with your friends and your family. Here's my last table conversation for you. Okay? So kids, what's something kind someone has done for you when you were sad? I want you to think about this. Okay, and adults, which of the 5 Ps do you think you can use to help someone in our community right now? So I put up those 5 Ps there. All right, go ahead and share at your table, and then we'll wrap up with this. Well, as we wrap up this morning, feel free to continue your conversations and linger a little longer if you would like to. I'm going to close this in a word of prayer. And again, if you would like to, feel free to stick around and continue to share about what's happening, what you're learning about life and its hardness. And so we'll keep praying for those 11 families in our community. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the gift that you give us. Thank you for giving us love and grace, empathy and compassion. You are a Father who grieves with us and who mourns with us and understands what we are going through. Jesus, you experienced grief in your own life, and you experienced loss in your own life of people that matter to you. And so you understand tears, you understand emptiness, you understand broken relationships, and the permanency of when somebody is no longer living. You understand the feelings that we get in our stomach and the emotions that we try to sift through. And God, I ask that you would wrap your arms around those who have lost loved ones here in this room. I ask that you wrap your arms around the loved ones who lost loved ones this week. I pray that you be with those survivors who are there, who are dealing with survivor guilt. And it should have been me. I was this close. I usually am in that spot, but I wasn't. So we are thankful, God, that they are still with us. But I ask that you would encourage them as they are just trying to process their own grief of that and that experience that they went through. Continue to mobilize our community this week and the weeks to come and the months to come alongside those who went through something hard this week. And be with all of those victims and those family members and encourage them as well. Help us as your church across this community to rise up and to look for practical ways to come alongside and help in the name of Christ. We thank you and we bless you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right, church. Glad you were here today, and we'll see you next time. Yeah, there are a number of people still in the hospital with their burns, and yeah, thank you.